Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Prahlad, Priya, Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, you are able to hear me, Prabhuji? Okay. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji. So, are you okay to start, Prabhuji?
Yeah, just let me try to increase. Are you clear? Are you all able to clearly hear me?
The voice is clear, but the volume is little low.
Volume is low. Yeah. That is not. Okay, I'll just take 1 more minute.
Yeah, okay, Prabhuji.
But is it anyway clearer than before, or is it?
It is okay, Prabhuji. We will start, Prabhuji. I think some of us may be using headset. For them, it will not be a problem. Those who are using, speaker phone, we have to be more attentive. So that's okay, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, devotees. Dandavat Pranam. Welcome to Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Today we are very glad and fortunate to have association of His Grace Prahlad Priya Prabhu, will share the nectar from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 5, chapter number 10, Sloka number 23. Prabhuji, over to you, Prabhuji. You want me to share the screen when you start reading the sloka, or you will share by yourself, Prabhuji?
I would prefer to read it on your screen than my screen. Then that's
Okay,
good.
Prabhuji, it's ready. Whenever you are ready, you can tell me. I'll share the screen.
I'm ready. Just start.
Okay, Prabhuji, I'll share it now.
Yeah.
I share the screen, Prabhu.
Yeah. Thank you. So do we read the verse and everyone repeats or all that? No, right? We just read
No,
it
Prabhu.
once.
Yes,
Right?
Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 10, verse number 23. Shastabhigopta Nrupati Prajanayah. Shastabhigopta Nrupati Prajanam Yakinkaro Vai Napinashtipishtam Swadharma Aradhanamachyutasya Yadkihamano Vijahatyaghaugham. Let's go ahead. Do we read the word-to-word translation or we directly read the translation?
No, you can read, Prabhuji, as you wish, Prabhuji.
Okay. Shasta is the governor, Abhigopta, a well-wisher of the citizens, as a father is well-wisher of his children, Nrupati, the king, Prajanam, of the citizens, Yah, one who, Kinkaraha, order carrier, Vai, indeed, Na, not, Pinashtipishtam, grinds what is already ground, Swadharmam, one's own occupational duty, Aradhanam, worshipping, Achyutasya, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Yat, which, Ihaman, performing, Vijahati, they are released from Agha Ogham, all kinds of sinful activity and faulty action. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. My dear sir, translation, my dear sir, you have said that the relationship between the king and his subject or between the master and the servant are not eternal. But although such relationships are temporary, when a person takes the position of a king, his duty is to rule the citizens and punish those who are disobedient to the laws. By punishing them, he teaches the citizens to obey the laws of the state. Again, you have said that punishing a person who is deaf and dumb is like chewing the chewed or grinding the pulp. That is to say, there is no benefit in it. However, if one is engaged in his own occupational duty as ordered by the Supreme Lord, his sinful activities are certainly diminished. Therefore, if one is engaged in his occupational duty by force, he benefits because he can vanquish all his sinful activities in that way. Purport. This argument offered by Maharaj Rahugana is certainly very effective. In his Bhakti Rasamrut Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami says, Tasmat kenapi upayena mana Krishna niveshayat. Somehow or other, one should engage in Krishna consciousness. Actually, every living being is an eternal servant of Krishna. But due to forgetfulness, a living entity engages himself in an eternal servant of Maya, as an eternal servant of Maya. As long as one is engaged in Maya service, he cannot be happy. Our Krishna consciousness movement aims at engaging people in Lord Krishna's service that will help them become freed from all material contamination and sinful activity. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4.10, Vitaraga Bhayak Krodha. By becoming detached from material activities, we will be freed from fear and anger. By austerity, one becomes purified and eligible to return home back to Godhead. The duty of the king is to rule his citizens in such a way that they can become Krishna conscious. This would be very beneficial for everyone. Unfortunately, the king or president engages people in sense gratification instead of Lord's service, and such activities are certainly not beneficial for anyone. King Rahugana tried to engage Jad Bharat in carrying the palanquin, which is a form of sense gratification for the king. However, if one is engaged as a palanquin carrier in Lord's service, that is certainly beneficial. In this godless civilization, if a president engages people somehow or other in devotional service or the awakening of Krishna consciousness, he renders the very best service to the citizens. ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते राधानाथ स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमो ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशकारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for the opportunity to serve, and thank you very much for continuing this wonderful Srimad Bhagavatam series for so many years consistently. Yesterday, I was listening to one tape of Srila Prabhupada as a class of Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada mentioned a point. He was very heavy on the point that why one should perform just Bhagavad Saptaha or do a only 7 days recital of Srimad Bhagavatam. When Srimad Bhagavatam should be read every day. And actually, Prabhupada very categorically made a point which was very nice. And he said that the difference between a Graha Medhi and Grahastha is one that who listens to Bhagavatam every day. He said he's a Grahastha. The Graha Medhis can do just Bhagavad Saptaha, but a Grahastha will do Bhagavatam Shravan every day. That's what Prabhupada said in the class. It was very amazing. And the way he made that point. So this is a section of Srimad Bhagavatam where Maharaj Rahugana is now having conversations with Jad Bharat. And just for those who may not have studied the entire chapter, we knew that Jad Bharat in his previous life, 2 lives back, was a very advanced devotee of the name Bharat Maharaj. And the scriptures mention that Bharat Maharaj had reached the level of Bhava Bhakti. But unfortunately, he became very severely distracted towards the end of his life. And that distraction, which basically was an attachment to a deer, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong in being attached to other living entity. But one has to be very balanced in life. Of course, I was not very able to systematically prepare the class, but I could definitely gather some thoughts after reading the purport a couple of times. So I'll just share those thoughts. Uh, so this is a story which is very, very many years back. And at that time, one small pet, which was like um this deer, could actually distract the life of Bharat Maharaj so much. In today's day and age, we see that, in fact, there is an entire pet lobby. Now, I don't know how many of you studied this. And what do they do is that they take out videos of pets, and those videos they go viral in social media platforms such as YouTube, Instagram. There are specifically dedicated channels also like that. Um, and naturally, when you watch some other stuff, these videos also pop up, and they apparently look very innocent. Practically, the entire class where my daughter goes, they keep pushing their parents for adopting a dog nowadays. They want to have a dog. So you can imagine, see, the problem with Kali Yuga is that there is too much of exposure to distraction. So, now take an example of Ajamil, for instance, right? We know that Ajamil, he was actually a nice Brahmin, and somehow he witnessed a very romantic interaction between a Shudra and a Shudra woman. And Prabhupada very categorically makes this point in Bhagavatam. He says that why is this point mentioned that, a Shudra embracing a prostitute? Right? Why was that caste mentioned, like a Shudra embracing a prostitute? They could have just said that a man embracing a prostitute, but they specifically mentioned a Shudra. So Prabhupada says that because the activities, the romantic activities between a man and a woman in upper classes are not exhibited in public. They are exhibited always in private. But it's only a Shudra class who would not mind exhibiting even private activities in public. And that's what has been criticized. It's not a particular caste that is criticized. It is this mentality, this immaturity. It is that which is criticized. There's a beautiful story I was recently discussing with somebody, and then that discussion came back to this point, and suddenly it's coming to my mind right now. There was I previously also shared it in one Bhagavatam class. There was one king. This story happened around the time of Mirabai, some 400, 500 years back in Rajasthan. So there was one king, Rajput king, and this king actually invaded another king. And because the king on whose kingdom this attack took place, he was busy with some activities. So he sent forward his son to fight, and the son was very valiant commander. So he went and he fought the battle, and the news came to the king that the son has now been killed in the battlefield. So then the king went, and the king had a very valiant battle. And it so happened that the king also was arrested. So he was defeated actually. As the net effect, the king was defeated. And then he was in his shackles, and then he was brought in front of the other king who actually won the entire battle. And the other king, he said that we have specifically brought you here in front of me because we are perplexed by a particular activity that happened in the war. And we want you to help us in that regard. So the king was surprised. He said, I am in shackles. I'm already bound. So, I'm already a bandi. And you are now asking me for some help for improvement of your kingdom. He said, yes. It is because something happened in the battlefield which completely shook us by surprise. And we want to know, how is this possible? We want to know the story. We want to know everything behind this. And we want to know how you can help us to come out of this. So what happened? He said, what happened is that when your son was fighting, the battle became very valiant. And we, in the midst of the battle, in the force of the battle, we actually cut off the head of your son in battle. But after his head was cut, his rest of the body kept fighting with both hands. And that rest of the body went and killed another 6 men, 6 or 7 men, whatever. And he said, we are completely surprised by this. He said, how is it possible? How can your son, how were you able to produce a progeny which is so powerful and so great that even after the head was cut, the rest of the body kept on fighting and killing few other men? This is practically unheard of, and we would like to have. So it's very similar to how, when the Kauravas, they saw Abhimanyu fighting in the battlefield, they were first thing impression was that they were deeply impressed. And Dronacharya, Karna, they all decided that this person has to be killed through conspiracy. There's no way that he can be straightforward killed because he's just too powerful. So that was the impression that even in this case, the people they just felt that this man is so powerful that there's no way that our kingdom can have anyone who is matching to this capacity. So the king said that, how were you able to produce a progeny like this? He says, because your semen must be so strong. He says, rather than keeping you a bandi, we would like to have you to come in contact with your queen or anybody from our kingdom and teach us how to produce such progeny, which can become so powerful. So that was the take-home message from the war for that king. So this is very cultural. It's a very cultural field 500 years back. So they are thinking in these terms. They are appreciating the good qualities of the enemy also and trying to learn from the enemy. So the king said that, yes, definitely I can produce a progeny like this, but you need to give me a woman who is as powerful as the mother of this particular prince. So they said, who is that woman? We would like to meet her. So he said, no, she's no more. She died. So they said, why? What happened? How did she die? So he said that, see, when this prince was a very small child, maybe just a year old, uh, there was the festival of Holi. And this prince was actually in the cradle, and my wife was swinging the cradle to put him to sleep. And all of a sudden, I entered the room. And because it was a holy festival, and I was just so attracted to you, attracted to my wife, that I went very close to her, and I had this color in my palms, and I very lovingly put the colors on her cheeks. So it so happened that the prince actually saw this happening. And when the prince saw that, I have put the hands like this in my wife, the moment I did like that, the prince actually closed his eyes and turned his face. Because the prince understood that I am performing some sort of a romantic activity, which is not supposed to be performed in front of everybody. And the prince turned his mouth in the cradle. And when the wife saw this, the prince did something like this. The wife became so disturbed. She became very angry. And she told me, so the king is saying this, she told me that, what are you doing? They're performing this in front of this small child. And she became so angry that, because she's a Kshatrani, they had this small dagger always with them for protection. So she took out the dagger and killed herself right in front of me. Why? Because I was not able to give the right samskar to my child when the child was in its early stage of imbibing the samskar. What samskar did I give to the child? I gave a samskar to the child that it is okay to embrace a woman or love a woman in public. So when the king heard that, the king was shocked. The other king, he said, wow. said, we probably don't have a woman of this type of character in our kingdom. So the other king said that you bring a woman to me who is of this character, and then I'll be able to produce the right progeny. So what we understand from this story is that it is so important to create the right samskar at the right age, and that responsibility is with one who is actually cultured, and one who actually belongs to um, a Brahmana or Kshatriya or a Vaishya family. Because from a Shudra, we cannot expect that they will be able to. And when I say they, it's not right because I myself am a Shudra. From Shudra, it cannot be expected that a Shudra will be able to perform this type of an activity because the lack of culture. But the culture is so important, and maintaining the culture is so important. So in case of Ajamil, what we see is that this activity was happening in public, right? And in today's age, the Ajamil story has happened many years back. But in today's day and age, we see that these activities are literally rampant. I stay here in Dahisar, Mumbai, and just close to my house, there is this footover bridge where we go from one side of the railway to the other side of the railway. And if I go there in the evening times, I see all these couples just standing there. And sometimes they may be engaged in some romantic activities. So something that has to be done in private is just happening publicly everywhere. I don't know how many of you visited United States of America, but if you passing through Manhattan or any other place, or if you take a boat ride, let's say across the uh, Hudson River, I believe, right? And you will see that you will practically see people openly, embracing, kissing, and all these activities. It's openly, publicly happening. There is no concern, there is no care of what we are doing. Something that has to be happened within the four walls in a private. In Kali Yuga, it happens in public. So bringing out this, so people may have, so earlier days, when generally we take a walk on the street and all that, we see people having their dogs. The dogs will carry, they're sniffing. But the close interaction, the loving interaction that people have with their pets, they are again within the walls. But with all these YouTube platforms and Instagrams and everything, they are now exposed to everybody. So what happens? Then the basic verse of Bhagavad Gita, Dhyato Vishyan Punsaha Sangastesho Vijayate. Sangat Sanjayate Kamana. So that happens. So when things which are very loving and interacting things with pets and all that, they become broadcasted, then people start having a feeling that, oh, even I want to have a pet. Even I want to have. So then it becomes like $1 million industry, $1 billion industry, where then you can have these exotic breeds of dogs. You can purchase them from somewhere. People buy dogs for nothing less than 1 lakh, the exotic breeds and all. In Bangalore also, when I was staying just close to our house, there were all these exotic breeds of dogs people having. And because the weather is very cool, you can afford to have this husky and all these exotic breeds. So nothing wrong in having all that, right? But one is to understand the mechanics behind it. You cannot keep your just head aside and blindly follow what's happening in the world. You need to understand that I am actually being dragged towards a distraction. There's nothing wrong in having a pet. There's nothing wrong in even loving and caring and giving a lot of mercy to the pets. In the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, there have been many examples of dog lovers, and including Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, and of delivering the dogs. But the dog never became a distraction in Krishna consciousness. That's where you're important. So, if you heard, Radhanath Maharaj also, he says that in Kali Yuga, we don't need to worry about weapons of mass destruction, but we are more worried about the weapons of mass distraction. And that's where the sanity of a devotee lies. And if you see, the entire pastime of Jad Bharat is a testimony of this fact, that how distraction can be so fatal. Of course, there is one good news. one good news is, and this is the opinion of Acharyas, especially Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And of course, in between Acharyas, there are differences of opinions. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the way he is and the way he's, the way he sort of brings out the entire aspect of bhakti. So he makes a point that the case of Jad Bharat, where he actually got distracted. I mean, Bharat Maharaj got distracted and he became a deer in the next life. He makes a point that the devotees or even sadhakas who take up to Krishna consciousness and who especially take up to the process of chanting the holy names of Krishna on a regular basis and following the regulative principles under the guidance of spiritual master. He makes a point that they should not be worried of taking an animal birth. Says Krishna is always kind that even if they get distracted in their life, they will, because they have chanted sincerely the holy name of Krishna, they will always get a human body in next life. They don't have to worry of getting a, and this is his specific view. And of course, because he's an acharya, we will take that view, and it is a very compassionate view. But a devotee, he says that a devotee will not be forced to take a animal life. And then he quotes this verse from Bhagavad Gita that Swalpam api asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. That because one has rendered devotional service of the Lord, very in a personal way, especially the chanting of the holy names, that person will not be forced to take an animal body in the next life. So that's the good news. However, one needs to understand that you may have to take one more birth. And then Prabhupada many times made a point, and Prabhupada said that if you take one more birth in Krishna consciousness, the spiritual master will have to come again and claim the spirit soul. We were recently reading one purport of Srimad Bhagavatam, and in that purport, Prabhupada somehow makes a point that, and I think it's part of the translation itself, that the living entities in the spiritual world, he says, I mean, this is talking about Nitya Siddha living entities. He says they are allowed to go anywhere in the universe because you cannot limit Vaikuntha. So one of the qualities of Vaikuntha Jagat, of material world, is that it has limitations. See, there's nothing unlimited in material world. I have unlimited wealth, but even that unlimited wealth is limited to some extent. So I have unlimited opportunities, but even those opportunities will be limited to some extent because that's the nature of the material world. The material world has boundaries, right? We know about a universe and that, like Viraj river. Again, it has a boundary, and then there are small universes. Each universes have some boundaries. So everything is quantifiable. Everything has boundaries. The spiritual world is considered as 3/4 of the 3/4 size of the entire creation. But the quality of spiritual world is that it has no boundaries. And therefore, although spiritual world has, you can see there's a boundary between the material world and the spiritual world. But the things of spiritual world can expand into material world whenever they want. And therefore, even a temple can actually become a place of the spiritual world. So Srila Prabhupada said that my temples are Vaikuntha. And you may say, how is it Vaikuntha? Because Vaikuntha doesn't have boundaries. If Vaikuntha wants itself to get expanded into even a material corner, it's allowed to do it. Similarly, living entities which are already in the spiritual world, if they want, if they are ordered by Krishna, or if they want to come to material world for some specific task, they can come. Nobody can stop them. Srila Prabhupada addressed his spiritual master as the ray of Vishnu who appeared. So this is the quality of Vaikuntha Jagat. There is no limitation. So Vaikuntha can come, extend into material world without any specific problem. So living entities can come. So your spiritual master, who is a Nitya Siddha Vaishnava, who may have already attained the spiritual world, he can actually again come. He or she can again come and claim the fallen soul. But Srila Prabhupada said, please don't make him do that. Make the utilization of this one lifetime and then go back to Godhead. So although Chakravarti Pad gives that promise that human life is guaranteed, Srila Prabhupada says that I'm giving you a promise that in this one lifetime you can attain the spiritual world. So don't let your spiritual master will come again and face the material circumstances just because of you. Of course, there are many ifs and buts and things that will happen that we know. But what is it? What is in it for me? That's what a devotee always thinks. And therefore, what is in it for me? That destruction is very bad. It affected Ajamil, it affected Bharat Maharaj, and it can definitely affect me. So one has to always pray to Krishna. I don't know if you recently heard the Bhagavatam class given by Radhanath Swami Maharaj, and he was speaking about the prayer of Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma is praying that, please, Prabhupada writes in the purport that Lord Brahma is specifically praying to Lord Krishna at the time of creation to save him from pride. And Maharaj said that, Radhanath Maharaj said that this is Evam Parampara Prapta. So right from Lord Brahma up to Srila Prabhupada, you will see acharyas making this prayer consistently, to save me from pride, to protect me from Maya. You can see that prayer made by Vyasdev also, by Narad Muni also, by Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, by Madhvacharya also, by Ramanujacharya, by and our specific sampradaya, Narottam Das Thakur making that prayer, Bhaktivinoda Thakur making that prayer, all the way up to Srila Prabhupada making that prayer. Prabhupada was standing in front of Krishna Balarama and praying that, please protect me from Maya. This is Evam Parampara Prapta. So every personality, right from Lord Brahma up to he has prayed to protect oneself from distraction. Right? Because distraction will be there. You cannot avoid it. They will come. You will be faced with situation, but you have to protect. You have to pray to protect. And therefore, devotees say that because Prabhupada always prayed to be protected from Maya, he was never affected by Maya. But the root cause of that was his sincere prayer of taking shelter. Because only Krishna can actually protect oneself from Maya Devi. Nobody else. I was actually recently supposed to give a small lecture in one place. And therefore, I was studying the life of Haridas Thakur from Chaitanya Charitamrita. And the way his life has unfolded, it's so beautiful that actually Haridas Thakur was tested twice. He was first tested by the prostitute. And the idea of prostitute was not to test Srila Haridas, it was basically to make him fall down. So Haridas Thakur left from that place. He was tested very, so Krishna allowed it to manifest. And then after delivering the prostitute, Haridas Thakur left from that place. Although he knew that Ramchandra Khan is involved in it, and Ramchandra Khan also got massive reactions of treating Haridas Thakur like that. But Haridas Thakur left from that place. He left from that place. He came to the village of where this Hiranya Mujumdar and Govardhan Mujumdar were there. And there again, in the conversation on holy name, this Gopal Chakravarti, who was a Brahman, he publicly offended Srila Haridas Thakur. So he insulted, and he in fact spoke so harshly. He said that if Haridas Thakur, if what you say is true, then your nose will get cut off. That simply by Namabhas chanting, one can attain liberation. If what you're saying is true, your nose will fall off. And Haridas Thakur very humbly said that, yeah, if what I'm saying is false, my nose will fall off. I allow that. So first, Haridas Thakur was tested for lust, and then he was tested for anger. In a very severe insult in front of very established assembly. And a outright slandering on the glories of holy name also. But Haridas Thakur handled it so well in such a matured way. Very, very mature. You must study Chaitanya Charitamrita to understand the psychology of Haridas Thakur. Prabhupada writes magnificent purports. And then after all this, Gopal Chakravarti got a massive reaction. So first Ramchandra Khan got massive reaction. The entire village was destroyed. So Haridas Thakur felt very bad. He left from that place. Then he came to this village of Govardhan Mujumdar. There, Gopal Chakravarti offended him. Gopal Chakravarti got massive reaction. He got leprosy. Haridas Thakur felt very bad. He left that place. He moved ahead. So everywhere these things are happening, Haridas Thakur is feeling very bad and he's just moving ahead. And then he goes to this place of Fulia Gram. And then he's now staying close to Advaita Acharya. And that's where Maya Devi comes and tests him. And there, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that when Maya Devi was testing Srila Haridas Thakur, Prabhupada says that she was actually exhibiting poses of her body, which will even bewilder the mind of Lord Brahma. So you can see the things which are happening here. These things would probably happen under the closed walls. And it's Kali Yuga, and it's happening in public. And it's happening in front of Srila Haridas Thakur. Right? The same thing which happened to Ajamil. Things which are happening in closed wall are happening in public. And here it is happening again in closed wall in public in front of Srila Haridas Thakur. And Haridas Thakur is not even distracted a little bit. So Prabhupada reads this purports of, reads this shlokas of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And the first line in the verse, in the purport that Prabhupada writes after this particular incident, that Srila Haridas Thakur is not distracted by Maya Devi. There Prabhupada mentions, the first line he mentions is that Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that Daivihi Esha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratteya Mam Evaye Prapadyante Maya Metam Tarantite. That this Maya Devi is Daivi. It is Duratteya. She is Duratteya. That means you cannot conquer over her. You cannot conquer over distraction. But Mam Evaye Prapadyante Maya Metam Tarantite. Only those who have taken my shelter can actually cross over Maya. So the only way that the devotee can do anything in his life to get away from the distraction is always taking shelter of Krishna. So what happened in the case of Jad Bharat is that his attachment to the deer became so strong that he forgot taking shelter of Krishna. That was the problem, right? And as Bharat Maharaj, as Jad Bharat, this Bharat Maharaj now in the body of Jad Bharat, what he's trying to do is that he's protecting himself constantly from this distraction by taking shelter of Krishna. So the taking shelter of Krishna is happening internally. Nobody outside is realizing it. Outside people are feeling that, oh, he's being dumb and he's just being, too much, whatever. But internally, he's actually taking shelter of Krishna. And what is the quality of a person who is always taking shelter of Krishna? The quality of a person, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that the love for Krishna, which is manifested, when that love is reposed towards living entity, conditioned living entity, a suffering living entity, that becomes compassion. So this love which was internally there, the shelter which is internally there in Jad Bharat, now he sees Maharaj Rahugan as a proud king. So now that Jad Bharat in this life, he never spoke a single word. So people thought that he is dumb and deaf. And now when the king is now challenging him in a different way, this compassion is just coming out, and now Jad Bharat is started speaking to the king. Whole life this person has never spoken. Even when the dacoits came and they captured him and everything, he never spoke. And now suddenly he starts speaking because the compassion is now coming out. Right? So this is the power of taking shelter of Krishna. He's always taking shelter of Krishna from inside, and now he started speaking. And here, actually, then we just have 15 minutes left. But now we'll come back to this verse. And Maharaj Rahugan is now making very valid points. So Jad Bharat has spoken to Maharaj Rahugan. Maharaj Rahugan has understood that this person is a greatly realized person. He's a philosopher. And now, therefore, he is making logical arguments and making very, very valid points. So this is, we understood about one aspect of the Vedic culture, that how Vedic culture avoids bringing things in public. We should not be brought in public unnecessarily to cause distraction. And this is the second part of the Vedic culture, which is very strongly now coming forward. is acceptance of authority based on rational logic and questioning. So nowadays you must have seen this in some videos which have recently become viral on public platform. Some people who are preaching certain cults, they have this concept of hallelujah, you see. So there are these massive programs where people come and there are these stages, and then people come there as if they are affected by some chronic disorder or a disorder right from their birth, which could be probably the person is a lame person, a blind person, or whatever. And then this Messiah or some great person who is a messenger of God, he just comes and says, Hallelujah, like that. And then the person is like, he immediately comes out and, start speaking, start talking. And then everyone gets impressed. They are shedding tears and everything. And then, oh, I whole life is now surrendered to a different particular cult or whatever. This is so nonsense. It is basically absolutely this absolutely anti-Vedic culture. This is this concept of offering your life wholeheartedly at the feet of some particular person because you are cured from a particular disease or you are cured from this itself is such a stupid activity to be performed. Like suppose if you are, because when you wholeheartedly surrender to a particular cult or a particular method of practice without any rational logical arguments or questioning, what you are basically doing is that you are trading your freedom, right? When a person surrenders in Krishna consciousness, surrenders to Guru in Krishna consciousness, that is done with full maturity and understanding of the Ishvara Jiva Prakriti Kala and Karma, and with a complete understanding that this surrender, this voluntary giving up of my freedom is basically leading me towards a much greater freedom. And that greater freedom is not freedom from some disease, it's freedom from the cycle of birth and death. And it's a very matured, a very logical surrender that a person exhibits when one accepts spiritual master. That is also exhibited based on the examples of people who have gone through that life, who have set that example, and not one or two person, but an entire dynasty, an entire legacy, an entire sampradaya, who has manifested a particular status of absolute freedom, actually. Freedom from fear, freedom from the shackles of lust, anger, greed. People who have manifested it, who have exhibited it. And through that example, through that understanding, and through the teachings and through the systematic philosophy, one actually surrenders one freedom. Not some hallelujah experiment like that. Even in case of, we see that because there's Rath Yatra going on and people discussing about Jagannath Puri. In Jagannath Puri, when first time Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had the conversation with who was the priest of the king, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, right? If you've seen the movie Gauranga, the Bengali Gauranga of Nadia, that movie, it is shown here that, Mahaprabhu just speaks the verse, Atma Ramasya Murayo Minuyo Nirgrantho Apyurukrame. And, some sort of a hallelujah experience Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya goes through and immediately understood Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. No, it didn't happen like that. In movie, people, they just, I don't know, movie either oversimplifies certain things or overcomplicates certain things. That's what I have seen when they bring up spiritual topics. They oversimplify, they overcomplicate. They never bring out the substance which is supposed to bring. What actually happened is that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya spoke to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because I recently saw that clipping somewhere of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya surrendering to Mahaprabhu from that Gauranga movie. It was like, I was saying, why they are not bringing out the real thing? What actually happened is that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya spoke to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He gave 8 or 9 explanations of the Atma Rama verse. And then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke back to Sarvam Bhattacharya some 64 or 66 explanations of Atmaram verse without even touching the 8 or 9 explanations which Sarvam Bhattacharya had given. I don't remember whether 9 or 12 explanations, but that's how happened. And now, if you read that verse, probably you will be able to just give 1 or 2 explanations of that verse. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave 66 or 64 explanations without touching the original explanations which are given above. That is a superhuman activity. And when Sarvam Bhattacharya saw that, he said, wow. And he was such a great philosopher and a guru, and he had initiated sannyasis like left, right, and center. And he had seen all elevated personalities during that time. This activity which he saw, when one person coming out with the 66 explanations of one verse, yeah, this is absolute superhuman. This is not just some rubbish hallelujah. This is actually superhuman experience. And then he said that, and then again, he set forward and he asked questions. There was a conversation that leading to surrender. So this concept of, suddenly somebody manifesting superhuman qualities, another person giving his whole life as surrender, this doesn't really happen, and it should not happen. Because if it happens, it will actually create a lot of disturbance in future. So here Rahugana is asking questions. And here Prabhupada writes in the purport, he says, these are very valid arguments which are put forward by Rahugana. Very valid arguments. So what are those valid arguments? We just have 7 minutes left, but we'll just see the 2 arguments which King Rahugana has made. He has made 2 arguments which are countering whatever Jad Bharat must have said in the previous conversation. So the Jad Bharat must have mentioned about the relationship between a master and a servant as being temporary. Right? So we know this story. Of course, I have not studied all the shlokas, I didn't get time. But we know the story that Jad Bharat said that in this life, you are a king and I am a servant. But you never know that in next life, I can be a king and you could be a servant. And he's actually speaking reality because he himself was the king. And now he has become the palanquin carrier of the king. So he's speaking reality. That the relationship between the master and the servant could be temporary. It is not permanent, right? And another thing he must have mentioned is that because he's a dumb and a deaf person, they cannot be punished. Because it is like grinding what is already ground or chewing what is already chewed. Because a dumb person and a deaf person is already suffering the results of his past karma. So what is the point in giving one more punishment to that person? You just ignore it, right? A person commits some activity, is a dumb or a deaf person. Even in the law, our Indian today's contemporary law, Prabhupada gives an example that if a person is able to prove that he committed this crime because of insanity, because lack of maturity, then the person is released, right? So Prabhupada often, he gave this example of one person who somehow actually proved the point that I committed a particular murder in madness. But then the lawyer, he was very intelligent, and the lawyer fought the case back. And the lawyer proved the point that to more or less extent, everybody in this material world is mad. And that's how then this punishment was actually given to this murderer, very intelligent. So even the law of court completely accepts this fact that a person is already suffering. Why you want to punish this person once again? Both these arguments are very correct. And the king is giving very valid reason why these arguments also needs to be rethink about. And the king is saying back, the king was saying that, yes, I accept this fact that the relationship between the king and the subordinate is temporary. But my dear friend, why don't you understand this point that because now I am the king, it is my responsibility to ensure that my subordinates, my people are performing their prescribed duties properly. Because if they are not performing their prescribed duties properly, then there is a very high chance that they will not be led towards the path of self-realization. Right? So in older days, and it is recorded in the Arthashastra of Chanakya Pandit also very clearly The Chanakya Pandit says that if a person becomes a sadhu and starts wearing a saffron, then the king should ensure that this person is actually a sadhu and is actually following the principles which are supposed to be followed by a sadhu. And he is not somebody who has given up his prescribed duties out of negligence, out of laziness, out of immaturity, and become a sadhu just to get free from the responsibility of the prescribed duty. This is a duty of the king to ensure. And if he sees a person like this who has become a sadhu, then such a person has to be thrown out of the kingdom. This is mentioned in Arthashastra, Chanakya Arthashastra. So, king is, so Rahugana is saying, yes, you may be a mendicant, you may be a sadhu, but I am a king, and it's my duty to validate that everyone is engaged in prescribed duties, and nobody is surrendering to Krishna prematurely, or just giving up life and surrendering to Krishna. For those of you who are from Maharashtra, you may have heard the story of Naneshwar Maharaj. So Naneshwar Maharaj, somehow his father suddenly became very, his father and mother both, in fact, they suddenly became very renounced because of because of their religiousness, and prematurely they actually took sannyas. And then when they went to meet their guru and they said that we have taken sannyas, the spiritual master said that I didn't ever allow you to take sannyas. Why did you take it? Now, when they took sannyas, it was like a public ceremony. Everyone knew that they have taken sannyas. So people didn't expect them to come back. Because then the spiritual master said that, no, I'm not allowing you. So they actually came back and started living like Grahastha. So it became a huge issue that time. In fact, it became like a public news, and people have written long literatures on it. That should a person who has taken sannyas should ever come back as Grahastha. There are Vedic scholars who came and wrote books and theses that should a person who has taken sannyas again comes back, should he be accepted in Varnashram system or not, like that. And it became if those of you study history, this became actually, and the entire family of this poor child, the five brothers, Daneshwar, Sopandev, Muktabai, and Nivruttinath, I think one more, or maybe four of them, they were actually made outcast by the entire community that time. Because their father and mother took sannyas and they came back. So this thing was taken very seriously. You cannot just take sannyas and come back like that. Prabhupada was the first munificent person who said that, yeah, I am actually teaching the line of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. So I have to be very forgiving. Otherwise, this is a very obnoxious thing from Varnashram point of view, that you take sannyas and you actually come back from sannyas and again become a grahastha. Absolutely not acceptable. It's a very severe thing. Why? Because why did you even take sannyas? You took an accepting an order prematurely is not valid. You better go through the rigorous tapasya and austerity. It is mentioned in the purport that one has to follow austerity. One has to follow tapasya, mature yourself, and then take the responsibility of Dash. And then the last point which he mentions here was the reason why one needs to do this is because through the prescribed duties, one can actually attain self-realization. And Rupa Goswami, he says, Yena Kena Prakarana, we read in that first time in the purport, that Rupa Goswami says, Yena Kena Prakarana Mana Krishna Nivesha. So, Rupa Goswami says that if you read Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he mentions certain auspicious and punya activities which are performed by people. And Prabhupada often said that one who is a sadhaka, one who is surrendered to Krishna, need not worry about performing auspicious activities so much. So what are these activities? Like, planting trees, digging wells, building dharmashalas, building some temples. But Rupa Goswami says that these activities are very important and they should be performed. Why? He says, because you never know who will come and take shelter of the tree that you have built. You never know who will come and drink water at the, in Marathi it's called Panpoi. Panpoi is a place where serve water to people free of cost. You never know who will actually drink the water. Recently, one of our friends, during the summer season, some Rajavasis came to him and said that people do Vraja Parikrama and they become very thirsty. So why don't you help us set up a cooler? So all the devotees came together and they set up a cooler. Why? Because you never know who's going to drink that water. This is Brajavasis who are going to do parikrama. If they come and drink the water, they will say, oh, who must have created this water cooler for us? Oh, may Krishna bless that person. Right? Or somebody comes and takes shelter of a tree that you have planted. And you will say, who must have built this tree? Or even if you may not say that, but you in the and I'll end here. In Sword of Knowledge book, Prabhupada makes a very valid point. Is my voice very clear? Are you all able to hear me?
Prabhuji, I think,
Sorry?
Prabhuji, we lost you for a few seconds. I think you are back now. Okay.
Yeah, because it showed to me that my connection is not stable. Yeah. So, in Sword of Knowledge, Prabhupada says a very massive point, and he quotes this point of Rupa Goswami. Rupa Goswami says that he says that, what is that verse? Krishna bhakti rasa bhavitamati kriyatam yadi kutopi labhyate tatra laulyamapi mulyamekalam koti janma sukrutair na labhyate. Rupa Goswami says that Krishna bhakti rasa bhavitamati, Krishna consciousness, facility to engage in Krishna's loving service. Kriyatam yadi kutopi labhyate. If it is being offered to you anywhere, just go and buy it. Do it. Don't think twice. Why? Because tatra laulyam api mulyam. Oh, the only price that you can pay for Krishna consciousness is the greed for Krishna consciousness. Why? Because koti janma sukruta nalabhate. Even koti janma sukruti you perform, you may not get Krishna bhakti. It is not possible. Then you may forget, what are you talking about? That means I have done something which is better than koti janma sukruti. Now when I live my life, I don't really see that happening. I mean, I am suffering through I have many problems. I have family problems, job problems. Even in temples, I have problems. So my life doesn't look like, Koti Janma Sukrutair or something better than that. Now, Prabhupada says that by rendering a Sukruti unknowingly to a Vaishnava is much more powerful than Koti Janma Sukruti or performing auspicious activities of dana and punya and tapa for many lifetimes. More than that, you get benefit by simply doing one unknown service to an advanced Vaishnava. That is the power of bhakti. So because you must have done that somewhere in your life, either knowingly or unknowingly, because of that bhakti, you are now a devotee. So now, because that great fortune has been just bestowed on us without really doing much, sometimes we take it very lightly, and that's why we get distracted. So the purport of this entire story is that, yes, we have been offered this very precious gift, but we should not get distracted and lose that gift, right? And become very sincere and serious in our sadhana, because only by taking shelter of Krishna can one be protected from destruction. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada teacher. If we have any questions, we can take. Otherwise, we can end.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for very beautifully describing how distraction could be catastrophic to our spiritual life. You quoted various examples, Jamila, Haridas Thakur, both the corners actually, of how one person got distracted, other person, how he actually very easily overcame and stayed firm in the Krishna consciousness. Thank you, Prabhuji. It was a very beautiful class. Devotees may please unmute and share their questions or comments that you may have, please.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandvat Prana. I'm not that interested to ask questions. So only thing is, it was wonderful class. Um, you explained about Ajamila, like why they are Sudras and like it is a public display of things. Like, the intricate points we heard from you. It was wonderful. And also the story of the Rajput king. Very nice class, wonderful class in the morning, Prabhu. Done with Pram.
Thank you, Mataji. I thought you were asking a question.
No, Prabhu, I'm not that intelligent to ask you questions. I mean, so many things we learned from you today.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you.
Prabhuji, I have very, one basic question. So you mentioned about Prabhuji accepting, one as a spiritual master or a sampradaya based on logical questions and then surrender service. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevayam. Prabhuji, basically, the nature of people, no, Prabhuji. Some people may be of intellectual class who may be asking this logical question and then try to understand the philosophy and then they will accept. But there are other classes of people who will not have that intellectual logic, but they go by emotion and then get attracted by that emotion and then they start serving and then the Lord responds and then I think they get connected through the parampara. But many times, what we see here, Prabhuji, in both the cases, those who are raising intellectual questions and then they become arrogant. At some point of time, they go away. And those who are actually asking, those who are emotional, get attracted, also get misguided because emotion may actually mislead. Somehow, I think we are all very fortunate to be connected to the right sampradaya. But when we go for preaching, so this is where I really see that people either get too attracted by emotion and they take the wrong path, or people who are too intellectual in asking questions they never take it up. How to understand this, Prabhuji?
Yeah, so this question shows that you are a very intelligent person.
No, Prabhuji. No, no.
Yeah, that's a very fact, Prabhuji. Many years back, there was a brahmachari class, and one brahmachari had told me what was spoken in the brahmachari class. So I will just share the answer to this question from that class. So it was a brahmachari class taken by Radhanath Maharaj, and Maharaj told in that class two things. He says people do not leave Krishna consciousness because of either intellectualism or because of emotionalism. People leave Krishna consciousness only because of offenses. And he said that offenses can be, there are two reasons why people actually may become offensive. He says one is that either they are arrogant or they are just not have understood the culture of Krishna consciousness very well, or if they are lazy. So he said that these two things are the main cause of people actually leaving. That can happen to an intellectual person also, and that can happen to an emotional person also. Being lazy and then committing offenses to people. These are the only two reasons why somebody can leave Krishna consciousness. Because when you are offensive, especially, then you are telling to Krishna that Krishna, what you have given me, I don't really deserve it. Because mercy is the, I mean, this is one understanding of it. Like mercy is the exclusive department of Srimati Radharani, or the pleasure potency of the Lord. For us, it is Srimati Radharani. For someone else, it could be Sita Devi. For someone else, it could be Lakshmi Devi. It is an exclusive department of that. And offense is actually literally called as aparadha, means where Radha is not there. Aparadha means where there is no Radha. There is no aradhana. There is no worship. There is no submission. That is aparadha. So it is like you are saying that, oh, you gave me mercy of Radharani, but I don't deserve it because I am aparadhi. Because I am opposite of Radha. So then, so then what happens? Is it that the mercy is taken away? So no, it is not taken away, but you are covered. So your understanding and your connection to that mercy is actually closed. It's like a wealthy person who has millions of rupees in the treasury, but has forgotten where is that treasury now. So because Krishna says Krishna matta smurtir jnanam apohanam cha. So remembrance comes from me, forgetfulness comes from me. So Krishna gives you forgetfulness of that mercy. Because you want it. Because you want that forgetfulness. Because you're offending Krishna. So offenses are the main reason why people actually leave Krishna consciousness, not being intellectual and not being emotional. But let's look at the intellectual part and the emotional part both. What I have seen often is that for both people, whether they are intellectuals or they are emotional, they both need uh, a company which is very compatible and which is very conducive for them. So all one can do for protecting people from leaving Krishna consciousness is to ensure that that company is always available. So for an intellectual person, it could be he may have very challenging questions. But an intellectual person, in my observation, will not suddenly leave Krishna consciousness because all those challenging questions are not answered. That may not happen. Right? The person will basically keep on waiting until he gets answer to all these questions. Right? But every person has certain emotional needs. And every person has certain, if those emotional needs are destroyed, then the person will go away. Every person has certain needs. If those needs are not fulfilled, and the needs are attacked at, and they are not satisfied, then certain social needs, then the person actually goes away. So to maintain those social needs is a basic responsibility of a community. So ideally, in a devotee community, see, if you are very, this is my observation. I'm just speaking based on my experience and observation. That sometimes, thought comes in mind, that devotee, I have not seen him for so many days. Yeah. Why I'm not seeing him? What's wrong? Is everything okay with him? So if this thought is actually coming to your mind and is disturbing you, then very high possibility there's something wrong is happening in that person's life. So if you have some connection, just reach out to the person and just have a talk. Is everything okay with you? It's fine. Now we are here, Prabhu. Anytime. To whatever capacity possible, we can help you. So if you do that, then most of the times the person may be going through some difficulties and he will say, oh, at least somebody. So that feeling that at least someone was there who cared for me, that feeling is enough for a person to continue then. We were talking about one case where you have seen this picture here. This picture here. You're able to see this?
Yes, Prabhuji. Krishna
This
standing
picture is
alone.
drawn by a disciple of Prabhupada called Muralidhar Prabhu. It's the very famous and painting. I also personally like that painting a lot. So when Muralidhar Prabhu was admitted to hospital, this is after Prabhupada had passed. He went through a very bad phase, and not a single devotee went to even see him in the hospital. That's when he and his wife decided to move out of ISKCON. Actually, so very sad. Not a single person went and even said, Prabhuji, how are you? Is everything fine with you? So now he's not a sentimental person. He's probably an emotional person and an artist. But at right time of need, people expect, because you give your life for an organization. See, most of these people, if they had to work out of ISKCON with this type of quality of artistry, he would earn millions of rupees. He's giving all that for Krishna. Some of our temple presidents, Gaurang Prabhu, for example, take an example. If he had to work outside, he could be a CEO by now. He probably owning his own companies and everything. He's given his whole life. So should there not be a support for such a person if something happens? You cannot just forget. So therefore, it's a responsibility of the community to ensure that the emotional needs, even an intellectual person will have emotional needs. Those needs are taken care of. And somewhere I feel that there is one particular thing which happens in Madhva Sampradaya, which ISKCON as a society should, and this is personally my very personal opinion, and don't put this in social media. It's just very, very personal opinion.
I'll stop the